Hello friends, what's up? It's Jaime here. Welcome back to another Fangirl Fridays video. As it is Black History Month, in today's Fangirl Fridays video, I wanted to highlight some of my favorite Black authored books. I have a lot of recommendations spanning several different genres that you can read all year long and should read all year long, not just during Black History Month. So without further ado, let's get into the video. First, we have Salt and Nejma, which are poetry collections by Nayera Waheed. These poetry collections cover a variety of important topics ranging from Black womanhood and misogynoir, racism, anti-Blackness, identity, love, heartbreak, and xenophobia. Next, we have I Love My Love, which is a poetry collection by Raina Biddy. This poetry collection explores Raina's childhood as well as her parents' toxic relationship and how Raina eventually learned self-love. Next, we have Empty Bottles Full of Stories, which is a poetry collection by Robert M. Drake and R.H. Sin. So the first half of the book contains poems by Robert M. Drake, and the second half of the book contains poems by R.H. Sin. And Robert M. Drake's poems generally focus more on societal, social justice issues, whereas R.H. Sin's poems are generally more about love and heartbreak. Next, we have Black Girl Call Home, which is a poetry collection by Jasmine Mans. This poetry collection covers the intersections between Blackness, womanhood, and queer identity. Mans poignantly conveys the intersections of these identities as a Black queer woman, while also reflecting on what it means to become an adult. If you are familiar with my channel, this next book series needs really no introduction. So next we have The Legendborn Cycle by Tracy Deonn. The Legendborn Cycle is a fantasy series that follows the story of 16-year-old Bree Matthews. The Legendborn is essentially this secret society that is based on the mythos of King Arthur and the Round Table, and essentially they fight demons and protect humanity. Bree infiltrates the Legendborn Society at UNC Chapel Hill in order to uncover the truth about her mother's death, while inadvertently discovering her own secret ties that she was not aware of to the group. Again, if you're familiar with my channel, you already know that I have talked at length about just how much I love Legendborn. I made a two-part video series about it that you can go check out if you want. But yeah, so I could gush about Legendborn forever, but for the sake of this video not being a million minutes long, I will contain myself. But just know that I particularly this is my favorite. This is my favorite of the books in this recommendation list, just so that we're on the same page. Next, we have War Girls and Rebel Sisters by Toche Onyobuchi. These science fiction novels are set in a post-apocalyptic, distant future where the world has been devastated by climate change and nuclear conflict. Also, many people in the world of War Girls have undergone pretty intense cyberization due to the nuclear radiation, as well as just generally from war, losing body parts and organs and whatnot. They've undergone a process called augmentation where they've gotten cybernetic parts, and Onyi is one of those people. She has a cyber eyes, robot arm. War Girls follows Onyi, a child soldier for the Biafran military, and her younger sister Ife, who have been torn apart by a resurgent Nigerian civil war and find themselves fighting on opposing sides. I'd tell you more about what Rebel Sisters is about, but it contains very heavy spoilers for War Girls, so you'll just have to read it for yourself. Next, we have The Blood Gift Duology by N.E. Davenport. I actually have my copy of The Blood Trials with me on hand. Unfortunately, I don't have The Blood Gift with me, but look at this beautiful cover. This fantasy science fiction duology is a story of loyalty and rebellion. We follow Ikenna Amari, who is a young Black woman who must combat racism and misogyny and compete in these very deadly, very brutal trials in order to become an elite warrior known as a Praetorian in order to avenge her grandfather's death. The best way that I can describe The Blood Trials is being a cross between Legendborn, which, as you guys know already, I love Legendborn, from a narrative as well as a character's perspective. They feel quite reminiscent, while not being the same, but they have a similar feel to Legendborn from The Blood Trials, as well as being, so it's a cross between Legendborn and then also it has the brutality of the Poppy War. And I again, like I loved Legendborn. I loved the Poppy War, even though it traumatized me. And so this book was like very much up my alley. Again, I'm not really gonna go into more detail about The Blood Gift, which is the sequel to The Blood Trials, because spoilers, very heavy spoilers for The Blood Trials. So again, you'll just have to read it for yourself, but I promise you will not be disappointed. Next, we have Rosewater by Liv Little. In this novel, we follow 28-year-old Elsie, who is a lesbian living in South London, who at the start of the story has just been evicted from her housing. Having an estranged relationship with her family and nowhere else to turn, Elsie calls up her childhood best friend Juliet and ends up staying with her until she can get back on her feet. Now, when this happens, this is the first time that Elsie and Juliet have spoken in a while. And so as the weeks of Elsie's stay turns into months, her and Juliet grow like closer once again, and Elsie begins to realize that she may have more than platonic feelings towards Juliet. Without giving away the ending for Rosewater, I really enjoyed like the whole novel, but I will say, again, not trying to do my best to like not spoil it, the ending is a bit soap opera-y. Like it comes a little out of left field. But because I enjoyed like so much of like the rest of the novel, I was like able to kind of like look past it, but just be aware of that. All right, next we have Homebodies by Tembe Denton Hurst. Homebodies follows the story of Mickey Hayward, a Black lesbian writer in New York City who has just learned that she is being let go from her flashy media job. Okay, I don't know what happened to the original clip of me talking about this, but basically, after Mickey gets laid off from this job, she writes this searing manifesto that she posts on Twitter, where essentially she details all of the racism and sexism that she had to put up with while she was working at this job and just like throughout her time in the industry, like all the racist, sexist bullshit that she has had to endure, and nobody reads it, at least at first. As a result, Mickey retreats back to her hometown in Maryland, where she contemplates her skill and future as a writer, while also considering the future of her long-term relationship with her girlfriend, considering whether or not this is a relationship she wants to stay in, whether it's still serving her. And she also meets up with her childhood best friend, who was also her first love. So that person comes back into her life. And then just when she's starting to kind of like settle back into Maryland, things kind of seem to be quieting down, Mickey's manifesto that she posted on Twitter gets caught up in a media scandal, goes viral, and all of a sudden, all of these news outlets, magazines, people on social media, all of them want to hear what Mickey has to say. All right, next we have Rootless by Crystal Zara Appia. This novel details the breakdown of Effie and Sam's relationship. Effie and Sam are a married couple who initially seem perfectly for each other. They love each other, they're successful, they have a 4-year-old daughter named Olivia, and everything seems to be going well on the surface until one day Sam comes home and he finds that Olivia is by herself. I think she had just been like dropped off by like the babysitter or nanny or whatever. But she had just gotten home, but she's by herself. Effie is not there and has apparently left them. So that's where the novel begins. So then we kind of like go back in time several years to when Effie and Sam first met and how they fell in love, how their relationship developed, and then we eventually get to how their relationship, how their marriage broke down, and if it's possible for them to save it. Because again, initially, like they seemed to be really good for each other and they really loved, really cared for each other, but it became very clear very quickly over time that Effie and Sam had very separate visions of what they wanted their futures to look like. Where Sam, actually, should I say that? That's kind of a spoiler. Okay, so I won't say more than that because I'm not sure if that's technically, I feel like that's kind of a spoiler, so again, I'm gonna shut up about that. But this novel essentially poses the question where, can a relationship be saved? Can it be mended when the relationship's foundation had like cracks to begin with? Next, we have Night Crawling by Layla Motley. This novel is, I'm warning you right now, is extremely heavy. In this novel, we follow 17-year-old Kiara, who is forced to become an underage sex worker in order to provide for herself, her brother Marcus, and her 9-year-old neighbor in their apartment complex who has been abandoned by his mother. This novel depicts the failures of the US justice system when Kiara is named a key witness in this massive scandal within the Oakland Police Department, and now she is forced to deal with the fallout of several police officers who abused her. If you're going to read this book, I do recommend it, but definitely please look up the trigger warnings for it before you read it, because there's a lot of sexual assault there. Systemic racism within the US, namely within the police, is a very central theme to the novel. It's an incredible novel, but it's really it's gut-wrenching. Again, I recommend it, but also again, look up the trigger warnings. Okay, next we have Honey Girl by Morgan Rogers. In Honey Girl, we follow 28-year-old Grace Porter, who is a recent PhD graduate, and she goes on this girls trip to Vegas to celebrate. Now, Grace is this very disciplined, high achiever, has her whole life planned ahead of her girl, until she drunkenly marries a woman that she does not know in Vegas. Feeling crushed under the weight of her ex-military father's expectations, burnout, and the brutal job market, Grace flees her home in Portland to go stay with her wife, Yuki, in New York for the summer. Grace quickly falls in love with Yuki and really begins to question all of her carefully laid plans for her future. And we get to watch her as she comes to terms with the messiness of herself and adulthood. And I've got to say, her and Yuki are so cute. Oh my gosh, I love them. They're one of my favorite book couples. This book is very queer, it's very sweet, but it'll also make you cry. I cried definitely several times. It's very validating if you're experiencing any kind of burnout. Highly recommend it. All right, next we have Ace of Spades by Farida Abike Imide. This YA thriller novel is described as Gossip Girl meets Get Out, and honestly, I couldn't think of a better way to very succinctly describe this book. We follow Devin Richards and Chiamaka Adebayo, the only Black students at the all-white Nevius, I think is how you say it, private academy. It's a fictional school anyway. Where they are targeted by this anonymous stalker who calls themselves Aces at the start of their senior year. As Aces exposes Devin and Chiamaka's deepest secrets and threatens their futures, the two of them, who were virtually strangers before Aces started harassing them, must band together and stop Aces before things get deadly. This novel had me stressed out in the best way possible. Oh my god, it was so good. It was my first book that I read of this year, and it's damn, what a way to kick off this year, man. It's so good. All right, next we have The Wedding Crasher by Mia Sosa. This novel is a classic fake dating rom-com where our leads, Solange Pereira and Dean Chapman, why did I say his name like that? Dean Chapman, not Chapman, must pretend to be in a relationship in order to save face in front of Dean's lawyer colleagues because Solange kind of crashed his wedding. I will admit that I did just start this book, so I can't give it a full endorsement, but I've heard good things about it and I am liking it so far, so I'm willing to take a chance on it. Sorry if it doesn't turn out to be that great, but I think I have high hopes. I think this will be good. All right, next we have Zammy by Audre Lorde. Zammy is a biomythography, which is a genre that was created by Audre Lorde. Biomythography combines biography, myth, and history. Yes. In Zammy, Audre Lorde chronicles her upbringing in Harlem to Black West Indian parents and recounts the intimate relationships that she had with women over the course of her life. Zammy explores themes of lesbianism, anti-Black racism, McCarthyism, as well as Lorde's relationship with her mother, who she loved but often found herself at odds with. They had a very complicated relationship. All right, next we have Ordinary Girls, which is a memoir by Jakira Diaz. In this memoir, Jakira Diaz recounts her difficult upbringing as a product of housing projects in Miami Beach and Puerto Rico, as well as having to deal with her mom, who was dealing with schizophrenia, and her life was just generally kind of like upended by violence. Diaz details her struggles as a mixed race person, her struggles with depression and sexual assault, as well as her developing sexual identity. And she really reflects on how she was able to emerge from her challenging upbringing, really due to the love and support of her girls, her best friends, her girlfriends, as well as her finding solace in writing to really become the girl that she always wanted to be. This is another one of those books where you should definitely look up the trigger warnings before you read it, because it's very heavy, but I really did enjoy it. It's one of my favorite memoirs I've ever read. But yeah, it's another one of those very heavy books, so definitely look up the trigger warnings before you read. All right, next we have The Black Friend on Being a Better White Person by Frederick Joseph. Throughout this book, Frederick Joseph provides an introduction into anti-racism, namely through combating anti-Black racism by detailing the microaggressions that he has dealt with throughout his life. Each chapter of the book concludes with conversations that Joseph had with artists and activists who also go into their experiences with racism. This book also includes a glossary of social justice and anti-racist terms in case you're unfamiliar with any of the ones that Frederick Joseph uses throughout the book. He also has curated recommended lists of books to read, films to watch, I think also shows to watch. I don't remember off the top of my head because unfortunately I don't have my copy on me. There's also a playlist that he has curated for you to listen to. This is definitely one of those books where I think everyone should read it, particularly if you are like, you want to kind of like introduce somebody to anti-racist work. Because it's a pretty short book, a pretty easy read, and that's not to discredit like Frederick Joseph's writing or anything. He just makes it very like digestible and accessible, and I think it's I think it's a good starting point. Obviously, you should read lots of, if you really want to kind of like immerse yourself into anti-racism ideology, into anti-racist work, like, and unpacking all of that, you really should read like a lot of books, like way more books than just this one, but it's definitely, I feel, a good jumping off point. All right, next we have Dyscalculia by Kimon Felix. In this book, Kimon Felix recounts a traumatic breakup by reflecting on her childhood trauma, her struggles with mental health, as well as her struggles with math, in this kind of like a how did we get here kind of thing, because we start when like the breakup happened and then she kind of like takes us back in time. The best way that I can explain Dyscalculia is it's like this narrative poetry collection. And what I mean by that is I feel like generally because I read a lot of poetry collections, when I read a poetry collection, while the collection will usually have like several key themes that like most, if not all, the poems will kind of touch on, this one is more like there's a story, like we're getting taken through a story, because again we kind of go back in time to throughout Kimon's life, where she talks about her childhood trauma and her struggles with mental health and math, to kind of help really paint the picture of how she became the way that she was when this relationship broke down that ultimately hospitalized her, and again to kind of like really analyze like why it happened. And I've never read a book like this, and it was incredible. Though I also feel the need to say that this is another one of these books on this list where definitely look up the trigger warnings before you read it, because there are some pretty heavy subjects that are dealt with in this book, but it's really, really good. I really enjoyed it a lot. Damn, it's really gotten quite dark in here. Anyway, next we have So You Want to Talk About Race by Ijoma Aluo, where I consider The Black Friend by Frederick Joseph to be more of this like introduction to anti-racism. I feel like So You Want to Talk About Race takes it a bit further. Similarly to The Black Friend, Ijoma Aluo draws upon her own experiences, conversations that she has had, in order to provide this sort of like guide on how to approach conversations about race in a way that's direct and honest, with advice as to how to not get defensive, how to, stay on topic, to not get off track. This is another, like, everyone needs to read this book. It is incredibly insightful and important, and it's definitely a really great book to read, to share with the people you know, your family, your friends. Like, it's really, really good. Highly, highly recommend it. And last but certainly not least, we have Black Friend Essays by Ziwe. If you don't know, very quickly, Ziwe is a comedian and writer who is well known for her satirical commentaries on issues like race and politics. And in the satirical essay collection, Ziwe touches upon these subjects and themes such as race, politics, through pop culture commentary and personal stories. I also wanted to mention that Ziwe touches on the role of Black friends in society as well as her relationship with her parents in this book. Through comedy, because Ziwe, she's hilarious, she is able to confront and ask these difficult and at times uncomfortable questions about race, identity, and culture. Again, this essay collection, I cannot say it enough, it's hilarious. Ziwe is literally, if you're familiar with Ziwe's content, because if you're aware of Ziwe, you probably know that she has kind of made a name for herself, like interviewing a lot of like celebrities and asking them like uncomfortable questions about race. And so again, this essay collection very much reflects that, and just like how funny like Ziwe is, but it's also very thought-provoking and at times even heartbreaking. And this is just, again, another one of those books where like everyone needs to read it. It's a pretty short read, but it's very impactful. Like, go get it right now. It's so good. Please read it. Okay, so I had to run after I filmed this video because I had to get to class, so I wasn't able to make a proper outro. But thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know down below in the comments what your favorite Black authored books are. I'm always looking for new recommendations. My quick little TBR for February are all Black authored books. So we have The Wedding Crasher, Felix Ever After, Dear Senderan, and Devon and Chris Plan a Wedding. Like I said before, I just started The Wedding Crasher. I really wanted to read a rom-com for Valentine's Day, and I'm having a good time so far, so no spoilers, please. Once again, that's all I have for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I upload Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, except when I don't, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye, guys.